Hi, this is Steve, aka SR Supertrapp. This is my 1981 GPz550. It's also known as the KZ550D1 in the United States. Pretty sure it's the same designation elsewhere around the world. I posted an initial restoration video in 2018, and I just wanted to follow up this year now that I got the bike to a running status where I actually can do stuff with it, where it's starting reliably, I can take it to work and all those type of things. So I've done quite a few modifications since then. Since that initial restoration, the carburation was all hosed up. I have now got that completely dialed in, and I'll go into a lot more detail on that because that's one of the rarest things about this motorcycle we're looking at today. But also just wanted to share some of the lessons I've learned, perhaps ask some requests, and also just share information because we all know the rarer Japanese sports bikes are definitely picking up in value. I believe this bike is doing that because it was a one-year wonder with the twin shocks, etc. This bike was purchased by me in December 2013, and it was sold by a dealership in New Mexico. And I've kept the little logo on the gas tank lid, which shows that it was from Albuquerque Z1A. I've looked up on the web if that company or motorcycle shop still exists. It doesn't, but you know, one of the things in restorations is, at least in my opinion, try to keep the good things and modify everything else. This bike had a full frame off restoration. As you know, it was completely down to the frame. Everything was redone. You name it, I redid it. So let's just have a quick walk around, because I think you want to see the bike more than hear me talk, but I'm going to try to manage this video the best I can. So one of the things that I did over the last couple of years was I actually was looking high and low for this exhaust system that I installed. So what we're looking at is an NOS Supertrapp muffler and a Supertrapp header that I was lucky to find over in all places in Belgium. And I found it on eBay by doing a search. Now, one of the kicks or dings against Supertrapp was, well, it wasn't really a race system. The Yoshimuras and everybody else were much more race oriented. In fact, this bike came with a Yosh on it, and I didn't like it because it didn't allow the center stand retention, and also you had to pull the header off to get the oil filter out. Now, the Supertrapp came out in 1982 and eliminated all that problem. And I just wanted to share with everybody too is what kind of clearance this thing has. So I will test, when we look down here, that this thing is wrapped pretty darn tight. When I say tight, tight against the oil pan. In fact, the Yoshimura was real tight, but this thing wraps real good too. And it leaves the center stand. So I'll be the first to say, I'm not going to be racing it on the racetrack and beating the hell out of it at 10,000 RPM. But for a street solution, I think this thing is a damn good compromise, and I'm glad I found it. In fact, I've had, like I said, I've had the Yosh, also had a Vance and Hines on this too. Surprisingly, all the pipes make the same kind of sound with it, which was kind of surprising. So I'm going to walk around here to the front and also show you some of the things that I had to repair. Last time, after I got it started, found out this left fork leg, had to replace that. That was pretty easy to find. There was more parts available back then, back in 2018. I found some 1982 GPz550 mirrors. I put them on. I'm actually looking for a left one. I got a right NOS. So if anybody out there has got one, I sure would appreciate it, because I can also share a lot of information about this bike too, of how it runs, how it doesn't. And perhaps one of the interesting things too is, why don't we just have a quick look under the seat, and I'll share something I learned the hard way. And what we're looking at is, yeah, it's a straightforward stock OEM battery and wiring harness, etc., etc. So what's there to share? Well, I decided to stick with the original Shindigan R&R and the original stator assembly. I think you only can get one from Rick's or the aftermarket places, but they all make only about 50 watts. My point is this guy right here was definitely an issue. And what I did initially back in 2014, based on the advice from some of the guys on the forum who probably didn't know any better either, was I went with a Motobat AGM battery, and I had nothing but problems with that AGM battery. What would happen was the bike, if I put a multimeter across the terminals, it would charge when it was cold. The problem was the charging would go away when it was hot. And I only learned the lesson when I went to the Yuasa site and I looked up this application, and Yuasa doesn't make an AGM battery for this bike, and they only list the conventional lead acid battery. Lo and behold, once I replaced the lead acid battery, and I did all the rewiring on this bike, God knows I did everything on this bike. Once I did that, cleaned up all the connections, put an inline fuse from the Shindigan R&R, it charges exactly the way it should. And I've never had battery problems with it since. So looking around at it quick here it's also got the Fox Street Shocks stock. It's got the center stand added back in. That was something the original owner took off. You can actually see how clean everything is under there. You can see my wires, my three-phase wires hanging out down on the bottom. But perhaps the most, most distinguishing feature about this bike was the owner of this bike went to a lot of trouble and modified a lot of stuff. And what we're looking at is the Mikuni TM Flatslides carburetors, which were released in 1983, from what I know, for the Japanese middleweights. And what I mean by that was, certainly it was released for the GPZ, but it was also released, these carbs also fit the GS550, CB650, and also the GS550 as well. I'm not quite sure if they went on the 83 550, because that year had two carbs that split between two cylinders. So, but this was a short-lived run. They are totally discontinued. Mikuni makes no parts for them, and my request too, just because I have these, and we'll see them run in just a second. I'm always looking for parts, always looking for if by any chance somebody's selling something like that, I would be interested, so please contact me. So just want to share one thing, the way these are supposed to be installed. If you're going to install them on the 82 or 83 H1, H2, what you got to do is, you can use the H1, H2 boots, because those boots would probably fit this carb. The problem with that, though, is the boot doesn't have a intake or port for syncing the carbs. So that's a problem, because these carbs don't have individual vacuum ports for syncing the carbs. So what I did, and I think which is the most elegant solution, was I picked up some 1973, Z1A carb boots for the 28 millimeter carbs, okay? And what I did was I milled out the boot. It isn't a direct one-to-one fit, but what you can do is take a Dremel tool and use a big sanding disc, and you can sand out the inside diameter of that boot till it fits this. And now what it looks like, you got a seamless, install. It's all airtight, and it works exactly with the vacuum petcock, just the way it should. So I want to just share something too. We're going to have a quick look, and this is going to be looking back at what this bike looked at when I first got it. So I'm going to turn this way, going to pivot past my 40-year-old GS1000, and I'm going to go back to the computer because I didn't get pause on this, so just bear with me for 1 second. Password's incorrect. Go figure. 1 second. So I'm back. While I was logging into my laptop, here's a picture of what this bike looked like back in December 2013. And what I'd like you just to see is when I was pointing to those carburetors, you see whoever owned this bike, they put in some aluminum adapter that was mounted to the head, and then they used the stock boots from a Z1 and they adapted it that way. It was a mess. You can see how far the air filter is on the back. It's almost hitting the back cover. And there was the pipe. That was the Yosh pipe that was painted in fire engine red. And like I said, the owner of this bike put a lot of aftermarket parts on it. You just see it's got the fork brace, it's got the stainless steel line, Fox shocks. The seat was actually a Kawasaki OEM racing seat. And actually, so I sold this. Why? Because in my opinion, at least in my opinion, a stock seat, everybody recognizes what the stock seat looks like. More importantly, I think it's a much better fit for the bike. So the whole bike here, like I've been sharing too, the original owner also went with, remember these were the first year with the electronic ignition, or maybe the second year. No, I think it was the first year for electronic. The owner put Dyna 3, also tucked up in there, perhaps I'm not giving you a good view, it's got Dyna coils, and it's got an updated Barnett clutch, and that's pretty much the overview of it. And by now you're probably tired of me talking about it, but like I said, I can talk about bikes, and especially the ones I own. And the other thing that I had to fix between 2018 was the gas gauge. The gas gauge, for some reason, it would turn on. When you turned on the switch, it would go up, but then it would drop. I'm not an electrical guy, but I think it must have been the winding was shorted or something. I found another one, replaced it, got lucky, and it worked. So you can see the bike's pretty much pristine, and here's that original sticker, I don't know, badge from Z1A, Kawasaki, and Albuquerque. So I'm sure this will tell somebody, or it might be recognizable to somebody, but with that, I think what I'd like to do too is just kind of start it up, because I know a lot of people think smoothbore carbs are like, you know, just race carbs, and they're the worst possible thing. Not worse, but worse than stock carbs. Well, I think that's actually the opposite. This bike came with TK22 carbs that were super EPA jetted lean and took forever to start up. So I just installed the battery today. You can see I'm grabbing a header. It's not hot, it's not any of that stuff. But since I don't have pause on my camera, I'm just gonna take a second and I'm gonna pull out on my choke here. These smooth bores have two notches, and all I've ever had to do is get it on the first notch or first detent, because there's like, you know, there's a ball latch mechanism in here that holds it all open, and you can hear for yourself how it runs now. So just bear with me 1 sec. Here choke. You don't need it, so I'm going to drop it off. From here on out, I just kind of let it just warm up, just by holding it, getting it off the choke. But you can hear the difference between where it was back in 2018. You can hear those carbs. They sure don't sound like a GK22. It's almost ready to idle right from there. So, I'm not going to rip it for show, because I warm up my bikes. This is the first time it's been running since November. So, but that's how it's running these days. Just wanted to share. So I'm going to turn her off. And that's what I've done to this bike. So I would just ask again, if you got questions about the bike, maybe I can help you out with what I've learned. Certainly, I do not know everything, but I am an engineer at a medical device company, so I'm pretty detail-oriented. So once I start fixing something, it'll be fixed the way it should be. The one item I am kind of looking for, almost bought last year, I would like to, just wondering aloud, if anybody's got a swing arm, if they're ever thinking about selling one from a Cal Fab, I certainly would be interested in that. Why? Turning around. Well, guess what? I got a Cal Fab swing on my GS 1000 for, I don't know, 38 years, and I think that would be a good matching item for this bike. But right now, this bike, I will say, it's sort of rev happy. It definitely goes through the gears quick, and it is nice and light compared to the GS. And with that, I think I'll kind of end the video. And again, if you guys have some questions or if you want to share stuff with me, I'd appreciate it. And have a good day.